Hello, somebody recently asked me to give more information of how I've used nitric oxide to strengthen my skin. So recently I've been through a healing journey. Most of my life has been a healing journey. I've got to the age of 40 and not officially found out I have connective tissue disorder. And there's a number of reasons why, because I also have a combination of the stiffness. So I have ankylosing spondylitis. So I have two conditions that counteract one another and fight one another, called the stiff loose. So a lot of my symptoms were not predominantly seen as they would be with someone that just only had that condition. So throughout my life, when I've struggled with all the general aspects that people struggle with special skin, I have got through it without any medication or treatment by upgrading my diet and learning about healing and minerals and health, and learning about herbs to strengthen and the way that I eat. Over the course of my lifetime, the last 15 years, I have really had to change and upgrade my diet constantly to be able to sustain and be able to actually live and sustain a life to some degree, though I've still struggled in not being able to do what general people can do that do not have special skin. So people have asked me when I've talked about nitric oxide and my diet. Generally, from a child, I struggled to digest animal processed foods and animal foods, and I didn't really realize what was happening. I generally had problems like people do with connective tissue disorder with my bowels and micro tears and struggling. Lots of different people have problems with different parts of their organs, as the skin makes up your organs, your cardiovascular system, and what I ate. And even I noticed when I ate high amounts of fats and dairy products, I would get really unwell and get attacks. So I started to notice a synchronicity between the foods that I was consuming. And throughout my life, I didn't know what was wrong with me or get any answers. So I went through a phase of the last 15 years of just cutting things out. And that helped me to, and I noticed when I cut these things out that were triggers for me, my symptoms were improving. And then as I aged, and obviously your skin ages, things just still carried on to get difficult, and I had to just keep upgrading and upgrading. And then when I turned nearly 40, the last probably 38, I started to decline like women do with menopause symptoms, and a mother of four, really severely, and not understand what was wrong with me, because I was upgrading and upgrading my diet, and I wasn't still, and I was questioning myself, how much can I upgrade? How many things can I cut out? And I was still not seeing a sufficient difference. Whereas we all presume that we're healthy, but people with special skin, our body needs more minerals, way more minerals, because our skin struggles to create the structure, and to basically, the body has to hook those minerals in order to make the structure of our skin. And it's not able to do it sufficiently like people with standard skin and skin that's not stretchy. And that's why we have a different structure in our skin, and there's different types of connective tissue disorder. So because of that, when I started to learn about connective tissue, I started to realize that it doesn't mean that my skin can't support me, because even though I've not managed to do, and I've struggled most of my life to do some of the things, but my skin has still managed to give me a life. My skin has still managed to build itself, right? So what are the building blocks of my skin? I started to question. And at this point, I realized I had dilated IVC and stretchy veins, and I was getting blood pooling in my abdomen. And I could only stand for a few minutes without severe pain in my abdomen. The minute I stand, I'm feeling the blood drawing from my brain. I'm getting sicker symptoms, dry mouth and dry eyes. Even when I ate a meal in the hospital bed, I have to keep reclining my head back to get the blood back to my brain. People that have connective tissue know this sort of thing. And if you've had dilated IVC and the blood's just not making it there, Even sitting at a table with my family to eat a meal was virtually impossible. I was on the floor, anyone with POTS. But my symptoms were slightly different, so everyone was confused. I was having to sit on the floor and eat. And I couldn't sit up in this position like I am now, only for small amounts of time, and I still have to recline. But in order to stabilize myself, I started to work on the basis of trying to strengthen the skin and giving my body those minerals that it needs. Because if it can't hook those minerals up in the same capacity that ordinary skin can, then the probability is that it just needs more, right? So if you've got low iron, what does the doctor do? It floods you with more iron. So, you know, people that know that have got connective tissue, we struggle to get minerals and absorb it because of the way our skin is and the way our bowels are. So we have to supply more of those things. There's more space in our skin, right? Which also from a spiritual aspect means that more light can penetrate our skin and we can tame more of that. We have a completely different structure. So then during this time, because I've been getting a whole history of cardiac pains and tachycardia and chest pains, I was having a lot of neurological attacks. So I'd been reading and researching about the cardiovascular system and trying to take care of my heart. And I'd noticed a synchronicity with eating processed foods and seed oils, that when I consumed foods with seed oils in, it thickened my blood. Eating saturated fats, and I've noticed this for a long time, and it made my attacks worse. It made me sluggish, even breaking down the food as soon as you eat, and you know your blood's all rushing to your digestive system, and you're just completely lethargic because your body's already struggling with stretchy veins to pump blood all over your body, and now all of a sudden you've put a load of food in it, and the blood has to then rush to your gut to break that down. So starting to have this awareness of my body of how it was struggling. So I'd been learning about the cardiovascular system and the endothelial cells in the cardiovascular system. And the endothelial cells are the wall that makes up the inner lining of our cardiovascular system. And in order to rebuild itself, a lot of people know in cardiology that we need nitric oxide, and it's been proven it helps the flow of our blood. And obviously I was getting sluggish blood anyway, and it also helps rebuild and strengthen the veins of the walls all over our cardiovascular system. And because I'd been standing up for I'd had a dilated IVC at this point for about 8 to 9 months, and as soon as I was standing, I was getting burning pain after so many stands, and I could only stand up a little while. The pain in my IVC was just literally burning, and I'd just be there in agony because it was stretching and damaging. And I also have been suspected with Sjogren's and fragile tissue. So it was hurting a lot. So I knew I had to go on the basis of strengthening my walls and go in with nitric oxide. And how was I going to consume this in foods? So there's various different... I follow a full animal-free diet. I do not consume animals, and I have not done that for... around about, how long now? 8 to 9 years. And even if I didn't believe in those ethics, my body can't physically do it. It's way too exhausting for my body. And that was an enlightening moment when I did that. And it, you know, changed my perspective on the world and what is essential and what is necessary. And it happened to give me more nutrients and help me on my journey. So my diet consists of completely plant-based foods. A lot of plant-based foods are higher in a lot of the nutrients you need. I mean, they physically are. And once your gut microbes have rebuilt themselves and you've built up your gut, that takes 6 months to 2 years to really build that up, your system is set. Initially, you might not feel the benefits because your microbial system within your gut, your flora, has to build up, and it's specifically there for what you're actually eating. So it's not an overnight change where your body can just break down the nutrients straight away. We have a specific amount of flora for each food that we eat. And whatever foods we're generally eating, we will, our bodies, it's highly intelligent, will make more flora to break down those foods and gain the nutrients from it. So this is quite an in-depth talk. So as I had to consume a plant-based nitric oxide diet, And what is advised by a lot of doctors is that say to eat plant-based nitric oxide is to consume leafy green vegetables such as kale, arugula, that contain a lot of nitric oxide. Arugula, American word, is rocket leaves, and broccoli, and a lot of salad leaves. I love pea shoots. So any of those green vegetables then combined with a source of acid that can help the body when you consume that, such as balsamic vinegar, and I actually now use lemon juice. Initially, I was using balsamic vinegar. That is recommended. And it's recommended to eat up to 6 handfuls a day of rich nitric oxide foods in small cups to give your body this intense dose of the nitric oxide. Being a mother of 4, I didn't find that possible to stop 6 times a day and to eat these small cups that were not enough calories for me, because I'd lost so much weight, and I was struggling to sustain my weight. And predominantly this will build your endothelial walls and your cardiovascular system, but it's not going to help you sustain the weight. It's going to fill you up with fiber, which is good for your system, but you need to get some calories in there too. So I dropped it down to 3 to 4 times a day, and I had it accompanied a bowl with a meal with my carbohydrates, and my lentils and proteins that I was consuming. I was even on a level at the beginning, the first 3 weeks, where I was having the greens for breakfast straight away in the morning. That's the first thing that I did. Side effects from that initially were that when you consume nitric oxide, it dilates your veins, it relaxes your veins. When you're suffering from blood pooling and you have problems with stretchy veins, dilating your veins can be very counteractive. So I initially got even worse. I initially became like bedbound a lot of the time, because especially the first 2 weeks, my veins were dilating from all this nitric oxide that I was consuming. And then I was struggling to stand even more. But there becomes a point where you transition and you get to the 3-week period, where the nitric oxide builds up then in your system. And I just went a bit high from the minerals intake, the minerals that I was consuming and the nitric oxide that I was consuming. And instead of the blood going into my abdomen, I started getting these sensations in my head where I was big migraines, but I could actually stand. After the 3-week period, I could actually stand, and there was a dramatic improvement. And I saw a massive shift, because while I was giving my body all of this nitric oxide, and also the resting period also helped, because instead of me lying down with burning pain in my abdomen, while I'm lying down, my skin has time to then regenerate and heal. During your sleep is when your skin regenerates and heals also. So that was a massive discovery for me. I'm still implementing the nitric oxide, but I also take natural tinctures for vasoconstriction in order to aid me to stand up, and to be able to sit up in this position. To be able to follow the strict regime that I follow is very, very challenging, because trying to fit things in, because you can't have the nitric oxide alongside the vasoconstriction tinctures, because they counteract one another, because the tinctures are trying to tighten your veins so your veins can work, so you can stand up and hold yourself up, but at the same time the nitric oxide is dilating your veins. So at the same time as it dilating your veins, then it's counteractive, and then you can end up with pain. And when I did that and it implemented the tinctures a bit early, I was getting a lot of pain when I was eating them together in my IVC and my abdomen. So I discovered to take the tinctures, and I'm not taking the full recommended dose either, because my body is highly sensitive. So everything that I'm recommending, this is just my journey. I'm not a doctor. I was basically told by my rheumatologist and by the medical practitioners that they can't treat me, that they don't know what to do with me, and they're just going to forward me to my GP that strictly doesn't even understand my conditions and doesn't have a clue how to treat me either. Because a lot of the medical recommendations for people with loose skin are counteractive for someone with with the stiff ankylosing spondylitis. So how do you treat someone like that when you've got two conditions that fight one another, right? So I've basically been sent home from hospital, told that I can take paracetamols while my IVC, and I couldn't even stand with 4 children, and I could potentially have lost everything. My children, yeah, the anxiety I felt, I would have had my children taken off of me, literally, if I did not have family support and I did not have my in-laws and my husband, and I was a single mother. I would have definitely lost everything. Everything would have been gone. And I'm sure there's other people out there in that predicament, and my heart goes out to you. That when you're abandoned like that as a complex case and you just left, it's not very nice. But it gave me no choice but to treat myself, because no one else would treat me. So I'm now at the 6-week period where I can stand. I've had some tinctures this morning. I can't really explain this all in one video because there's just so much information, and it would just take multiple videos to explain all the different things that I've had to do. I consume herbs and make herbal teas every other day, and I keep a jar in the fridge, and I rotate different herbs that help rebuild the collagen, the structure of my skin. So when I sleep at night, my body is rebuilding, and my body is taking care of my special skin, because I'm providing it with everything it needs to rebuild itself and strengthen itself, so I can support and stand up and kiss my children and give them cuddles. So everything that I make and consume is not just about my skin, because I've got symptoms of Sjogren's and Zika symptoms, and because of the lack of blood flow to my brain, I constantly get dry mouth and dry eyes, because the blood is what makes the plasma in your mouth and eyes in order to lubricate those areas. And when you're getting lack of blood up to your brain, there's symptoms such as dry mouth and Zika symptoms, because you are lacking that protective barrier in your mouth to protect you against fungus infections, to protect you against the food you eat and bacteria. So there's so many different things that I have to do and consume daily in order to be pain-free. But I have consumed, every time I've been to the doctors over the years, and been given painkillers and they gave me some stuff for my drama. I thought it was absolutely disgusting to put in my mouth. Just felt like this chemical barrier. But the chemical barrier is not healing me. It's not protecting me. It's just putting a barrier over the top of something that's getting worse. So there's so much information to go through. I can't do it in one video. But there are so many things that we can consume to strengthen our skin. And if we give our skin what it needs, it can perform so much better, and it can heal and regenerate. Thank you.